Hello everyone, Jared here, and in today's video, we're finally concluding our trip around China with one final video about Wuhan. So when we got up in the morning the very next day, we took a taxi across to the east side of Wuhan, passing by the Yellow Crane Tower, the city's famous landmark, before continuing our drive eastward for about another half hour and eventually reaching the area known as Optics Valley, which was very close to where my apartment building was at the time. I ended up showing my father the area around my apartment building, taking stock of various items that I might need to buy before the new semester started up for teaching again. However, before we were going to go and get anything for the apartment, I wanted to show my father the place where I was teaching. So we went down into the subway, which was only about a 5-minute walk outside of my apartment building, and rode that for a few stops until we headed up an escalator and outside of the subway station to where we were able to get onto this tram, which would take us to my university. And by the way, these trams are something you'll only find in Wuhan, at least as far as I've seen. Anyways, we rode the tram for about another half hour before arriving at the university where I was teaching. And I showed my father around the campus a little bit, including the classroom where I was teaching, and after only a little bit of time there, we took the tram back to Optics Valley proper, passing by lots of construction going on either side of the road, because one thing that was going to be happening in just a couple months was an event called the Military Games, which I'll probably talk about more in a future video. And once we got to Optics Valley, the first sight that greeted us was this absolutely massive mall, 5 stories tall, with hundreds of different outlets on either side. This is where I'd regularly go on the weekends in order to actually buy anything or see anything. Oh, by the way, this place also has a pretty massive basement area that's always under construction as well. So who knows how much is underneath there as well now. We ended up taking this escalator towards the top of the mall and decided to walk around a little bit, looking at all the restaurants and people standing outside of them trying to entice you to come in for their food, as well as passing by a whole variety of food stands selling lots of different food on sticks, and having a hard time trying to decide what we wanted to eat, because there really is a lot here, including baked goods from bakeries, dessert like ice cream inside waffles, and even cho tofu or stinky tofu if that's what you want to try. And boy, does it really smell. And from personal experience, I can tell you, it's alright. Not something I'd necessarily want to go and have for a meal if I have the option though. So, as I said before, there are restaurant options on practically every floor, so it takes a long time to look through and figure out what exactly you want. But after being here for so long, I did have a few preferences, such as this place, which had Sichuanese noodle dishes, or this Japanese restaurant which had chicken katsu as an option, and it tasted pretty much like what I would have back home. But perhaps one of my favorites was this place, Hefu Noodle, which sells a variety of tempura ingredients in addition to a lot of ramen options. However, none of those were what we were going to have today. Instead, we decided to go to Green Tea Restaurant one last time, because this had quickly become my favorite restaurant in China. Every single dish I'd ever ordered here ended up tasting great, and if you happen to be in China, you should probably try to find one of these so you can try it too. As you can tell, the atmosphere is quite thematic, and that really is a bonus to the overall dining experience. The only downside to eating here, however, is that you might have to wait a little bit for them to make your food, but I promise you that if you do wait, it will absolutely be worth it. Eventually, our food arrived, and this is what we got. The first dish being this sliced pork with a little bit of konbu and green onions tossed on top, which was, of course, delicious. We also ordered this noodle-like tofu, which was probably the least exciting thing we had, but was still good. And of course, I had to get this eggplant again. This is probably the best dish I've had in China, so every time I come here, I have to get it. All in all, those 3 dishes, plus a couple bowls of rice, cost 80 yuan, so about $12 total. So if you think that 3 great dishes for that price and atmosphere is good, then you really should come here. And boy, do I wish we had this at home. And after our meal, we ended up heading out looking at more stores around the mall, such as this place, the Lego store, which, by the way, happens to have a miniature model of one of the buildings at Wuhan University on display. And that wasn't all. This place has large international supermarkets such as Carrefour, hair salons like this one where I'd have to get my hair cut, movie theaters with snack bars and foods that you could find in the US, small karaoke stations that are meant for two, lining up walls all over the mall, even an arcade with a lot of different games available if that's what you want to do. And they also have massage chairs all over the mall as well, if you just want to sit down and relax for a bit. So as you can see, this mall at Optics Valley has pretty much everything you could want. But it also has a few things that are quite unexpected too close by. For example, this place. Now, when you look at something like this, do you think of China? I know I don't. Seeing this place here makes me actually think that I just stepped out of China and into some other place, and I wouldn't be able to tell if it weren't for all the Chinese characters all over. This part of Optics Valley has a European-themed shopping area unlike any other in China, with each section being designed after another country, such as Spain, France, or Germany. And it was pretty much just filled with stereotypical iconography from these places as well, such as the matador and the bull. And it wouldn't always make sense why they'd have some of these things placed in certain locations, or why they'd have random English writing on some things, like the body of this cow. Some of the choices that they make in the design of this area are rather odd. Take this for example. Right in front of this big church, they have Spider-Man on this railing. I have no idea why. Then when you walk inside of this chapel, directly in front, you see there's a big screen that just highlights various parts of the Optics Valley region. And if you go up to the second floor and back away from this railing, you turn to the side and notice that also inside of this church happens to be something you would never expect to be here. A Burger King. I'm sure all of you think of Burger King too when you think of a church, right? I'm joking, of course. Moving on from the church, this place only got a lot stranger, because as you can see, they had this hallway full of mirrors that would distort your size, as well as all of these golden lights hanging from the ceiling, which I learned they keep up inside of this hallway all throughout the year. And this hallway was only the beginning of what was strange. Also on the second floor, they had this long hallway with a set of train tracks on the floor. And yes, it does seem rather authentic in regards to its construction. Maybe this is a recreated scene from somewhere around the world, but I have no idea where. Then once you get all the way to the end, they happen to have this train engine, which, if you happen to be there at the right time, will squirt out water from the front at you. I don't know why this exists, but it was certainly unique for a mall in China. Of course, there are also various stores you can expect to find with random English names, as well as many stores now that allow for people to rent traditional Chinese clothing and walk around with them at the mall for taking selfies and other photography purposes. But then they have some areas that are also designed for children, which are an amalgamation of various themes that, when placed so closely together, just present a chaotic scene rather than telling any comprehensive story about the place at all. Which I suppose really is representative of how a lot of China's malls, and especially Optics Valley, seems. As we continued our way through this area, we eventually found the German-style street, with, yet again, more buildings that are designed after what some stereotypical traditional German architecture would look like, with the only thing thematically German about this place being some giant tankard that says Frankfurt on the front of it, with mannequins dressed up for Oktoberfest all around the area. If it wasn't for these, you'd probably have no idea that it was supposed to be German. Also, I'm not really sure what this has to do with Germany, but apparently if you go up to the top, you can look across the way and find that there's a giant T-Rex on one of the roofs. Yes, that's right, a T-Rex. Anyways, as we kept moving down, perhaps one of the most insightful things about this section actually was as we got towards the end of the pathway, we noticed that most of these buildings are actually constructed from cut out storage containers. Again, I don't know how structurally sound this makes it, if it's made out of storage containers, but once they finish completing the exterior of these areas, they end up looking fine. Maybe someone could tell me down below how safe it actually is to stack these crates on top of one another for construction purposes. So, once we got through this area, the very last section of the mall was this, an airplane just sitting outside, for who knows what reason. Although, from my understanding, this place serves as a restaurant if you're interested in going inside of it. And with that, we were done sightseeing around the Optics Valley Mall area, and spent the next few hours walking on back inside the main area of the mall to restock on some food and other items for my apartment, before heading to our last meal in China together, which was back over to this Italian restaurant yet again, where we'd been just a couple of days ago. And since I probably wasn't going to go here again, since it would be hard to get to again once the semester started and I was busy teaching. And this time, we ordered some appetizers, each of us getting our own soup, although I think my father's, the green pea soup, was the winner. As well as our two main dishes, thinly sliced ham over mashed potatoes, which really was some of the best ham in China, as well as an authentic pizza that we were able to split between us. Again, I recommend you go to this restaurant if you can if you're in Wuhan. But once we were done eating, we went back across the river one final time over to Optics Valley yet again, and waited for the area to turn to night, when we decided to head up to the top of the hotel where my father was staying and check out the view from the very top, overlooking the center of Optics Valley. So once morning finally came, me and my father said our goodbyes to one another as he went off in a taxi to the airport to fly out of mainland China back to Hong Kong, where he would stay for a couple of days before heading back home, while I, in the meantime, was going to stay in Wuhan for the next number of months until my teaching contract came to an end, right around when COVID was starting to make headlines. So now that we've reached the end of this trip, I'd just like to say, if you've watched all of these videos so far, thank you again for supporting me and my channel thus far. Traveling around China and getting all of these shots was not really that easy, and of course it took a lot of money for us to be able to do this too. But in the end, I think it was worth it to be able to have so much to show everyone, and all the memories that will be preserved because of it. I suspect that some of my commentary on China has made it so that if I ever try to go back, I probably won't be allowed to go, so I might not be able to see some of these places again for quite a while, which really is unfortunate. But I hope that one day I'll be able to return to China to be able to see all the positive developments that the country makes in a time after she's no longer in charge of the government. All in all, throughout this trip, we traveled to over 19 different cities and had over 17 different train rides, and while it may have been exhausting to travel to even the most far-out places, I would say that ultimately it was worth it, because of all the things I was able to experience that ultimately, if I hadn't done, I probably would have never learned about or been able to see in person if I hadn't chosen to do this. So, with all that being said, this is the end of our traveling around China, and I hope you'll come back for future videos on wherever I decide to go. Thank you for watching, and until next time. Thank you again for watching this video. Please give it a thumbs up and subscribe to the channel if you have not already done so. Also, please share this channel with others so we can make the channel grow together as I continue to put out more videos.